This plan involves employment of minority groups in each one of the 17 unions, and it's agreed to and signed by each of the individual unions on the basis of the percentage of minority groups in the city of Buffalo and the county of Erie, which represents about 10.6%. Many of these unions have no minority group representation in their unions today. This will amount at present employment to about 2,500 jobs. However, with the construction programs that are scheduled, now which have been held up, which involve not only State University, but housing in the city of Buffalo, which is essential, this is going to be a constantly increasing number, total number of employees or workers in the building trades in order to meet the need for the amount of construction. So that figure will be going up. Now, Judge Martina, who is a respected member of the community, has agreed to act as arbiter in relation to the implementation of this program. I would just like to say that, in my opinion, we have found here a uniquely constructive solution, and that as a result of the signing of this contract by the unions and the builders in this community, I am now lifting the moratorium and we will proceed with construction. Yes, sir.
And I'm
a Baptist
here,
myself.
Yes, and I'm a Methodist.
Oh, excuse me.
And let me say, Governor, that we have, the minority people, have lost faith in you and the state of New York. Now, you did us in on the welfare situation, you did us in busing, and now you've done us in the construction. And we classify you with the rest of those governors of those southern states that have been keeping us in slavery. And we intend to do something about it.
There's a quote in the Bible that says, "By their fruits ye shall know them." You're familiar with that? Okay. All right. Now, just let me finish. What we're here to do is to cultivate these trees and to be able to pick that fruit, and the test is going to be in the results of the fruit. And this is what you're here for. This is what I'm here for. Reverend, your statement was utterly false, utterly misrepresentation of what this state's record of achievement is. And I would just like to say that as a man of the cloth, I just ask you to see for the record what happens under this contract.
This season is very appropriate because they have nailed us to the cross of minority group negativism and construction nepotism.
If we're going to take the form as the criticism instead of the substance has been achieved. The form was forced into the present form because this was the only way we could achieve it. What I have said, namely 10.6% employment in each one of these unions, if that is achieved, then you're going to have to.
You have a conjunction. You have if.
The goal was achieved.
You have if. You're not sure of it yourself. All right, Governor.
Listen,
let me say this. You said if.
This hasn't taken place yet.
You're not sure of it yourself. All right, now let me say this.
But I'm a long way ahead of
I'm
where
going to say the same thing I said to Mr. Marshall.
The potential gains of this agreement, and it may turn out to be the strongest agreement of its kind in the nation, must not be obscured by the sensibilities of those persons and organizations not included in the final stage of negotiation. For example, none of the officials of the State University of New York at Buffalo were involved in the negotiations. Nevertheless, the extraordinary progress represented by the agreement is clear. The agreement represents an important advance for our region as well as our university. In 1970-71, scheduled construction on the Amherst campus calls for 6 colleges, 2 other residential groupings tied to the faculties, important parts of 6 of the 7 faculties, and service buildings. The buildings are needed for the expansion of educational opportunities to many more young men and women black and white, and for economic and cultural development to serve all sections of the population of the Niagara frontier. Let's all give it a fair chance. Thank you.
It is no accident to note that the president of the New York State AFL-CIO Building and Construction Trades Council, Peter Brennan, has endorsed Governor Rockefeller's campaign, that the state building trades unions around the state have endorsed Governor Rockefeller's campaign, and as a result of this rotten political deal, black workers in Buffalo and elsewhere throughout the state are denied jobs that rightfully belong to them on public construction. In short, there is a clear pattern throughout the state of New York, a racist pattern in the building and construction trades industry, a racial stranglehold upon jobs and upon apprenticeship training programs. The union card is the ticket to a job. And if a black man, solely by virtue of his race and color, is denied that union card, he's denied the right to work. There is a state anti-discrimination law which, for all practical purposes, is dead. If Governor Rockefeller was honest, he would simply close down the New York State Commission for Human Rights.
We recognized that there was going to be a new school under the Rockefeller administration, university being built, and you know where they were placing that university at, because there was a controversy there in terms of do it go downtown or where does it go. But we recognized there would be a lot of jobs created on it, especially the construction work, and we were very rarely involved in any construction, skilled trades kinds of activity. So the Minority Coalition came into existence as a consequence of what was happening in terms of the University of Buffalo and that whole construction project that was taken off at that point.
Minority Coalition was owned by the state. It was a sellout. We were negotiating for real power. We had asked the state to help the community establish a factory that would produce goods. The governor had assured us that they would identify things that New York State was buying out of state, and whatever was feasible then would be shifted and would be purchased from this factory where we would make them. The premise was that, look, unions, many poor white people, the only thing they have to give to their kids, to pass them, is the union card. They're not going to give that up. Black folks should understand. You will be able to get into the mafia quicker than you'll get into those unions. In any appreciable kinds of... We knew that 25 years ago. Today it ought to be damn apparent that we're not going to get into those unions. The Minority Coalition was saying, let's identify minorities who can be trained to go into unions. Let's identify them first. And we're saying, the hell with identifying people. People need jobs.
My first concern is, how in the world are you going to get somebody in construction who you never had a construction company of your own, or never worked in construction yourself, or know the business? Before you can, I always use parable and playing cards. The game of bid whist. Most black folks know what bid whist is all about. You go to someone's house, the first thing you do, you ask, what are the house rules? How are we going to play the game? If you never played bid whist before, how do you expect to get in the game of bid whist? And today I'm seeing the same thing. I'm in construction, and I see a lot of folks trying to venture into the field, but you got to know how the game is played. And this is something that I found a lot of black folks, they thought, here's an opportunity with the so-called affirmative action and the law states now that we got to bring blacks in, and you found blacks who want to control blacks who are in construction. That's all it was about. They had the first inkling of how to go about doing it and getting folks moving in the right direction to the trades. You've got to have the background, Rockefeller was able to buy time with this program by canceling out contracts and construction for that particular year. The state was in a financial bind, and by them canceling out construction and the likes, it gave them a chance to recoup and get more monies into the state coffers. And so they used us as a tool of saying we got to identify black folks and all to get in construction. And the identification program, it was $300-some thousand, and it was headed by one of our politicians, who he brought some of his friends in, and they set up a program to identify folks. But to me, it was a useless motion, because we had a program, the Justice Program, going in Buffalo at the time, which was set up by A. Philip Randolph, and it ran nationwide, and was a recognized program. And black folks had been identified. But it was a case of bringing money in here where others can now could reap the benefits or get some money out of the system. And they played the system to a bust. It didn't do anything for getting minorities in. They would go in the corners and ask some of their friends, you want to get a job? And say, yeah, and they come on and register them and bring them in, knowing full well when they went before the white folks to take the test and to enter into a training piece, they weren't qualified. They didn't want the job in the first place. It was just a way of getting some money. And I know from my own experience of being manpower director for the city, many of the folks who came through these programs, they weren't looking didn't want training. They just wanted to go from one program to another. When they finished up 13 weeks of training, they said, well, there's another program I can go to? I saw so much of that.
We had a steering committee meeting, and some black men who were trying to get training through the Minority Coalition came to our meeting and said to us, nobody's doing anything. We need to get training, we need jobs, etc. And so right there on the spot, a decision was made that we would pursue that.
Bill Gator asked Governor Rockefeller at the time down on Niagara Street at the Mariner Housing complex that was being built at the time, what he planned to do about these men and about the minorities in the construction trades. And Rockefeller wanted to lift the moratorium so they could build the UB Amherst campus. And B.U.I.L.D was able to get them to sit down. In fact, the governor came to B.U.I.L.D headquarters.
I think one of the few times, if ever, the governor had really been at a community-based organization in a storefront within the black community. And so in that sense, it was a really accomplishment. The other part of that meeting that I recall was, I think, Rockefeller's commitment to trying to do something about the building trade industries and their discriminatory policies. It was clear that the unions were not prepared to allow African Americans to enter the trades as journeymen. And I think that Rockefeller had the wisdom and insight to know that that situation had to change. And for a year or so, the state had been attempting to find a vehicle through which they could begin to implement an affirmative action program. B.U.I.L.D, fortunately, I think, had the resources, the community backing, and the staff to put together a program that was acceptable to the state and to the community. And so out of that meeting came really a funding package of, I believe, about $1 million to set up a skills assessment center and to begin to try and integrate the Building Trades Union.
Towards the end of 1970, the process of establishing the BAAP had hit a snag when it came down to convening a special task force, which would serve as the decision-making body in the program, allowing representatives from the minority communities to work in conjunction with the unions and contractors. B.U.I.L.D had already conveyed the need for immediate action in minority hiring and training, at a 5-hour meeting with members of the University Construction Fund Council, where they had also discussed other programs related to integrating the construction trades. Not only had the task force not yet met, but there had not been any official meetings of the committees who were to detail the plans for integrating individual craft unions either. B.U.I.L.D had warned the state to act soon on this program, or else they would withdraw.
The B.U.I.L.D organization and other parties in the Affirmative Action Program, which are the unions and contractors, have just about run its course in patience. The other main party, which is the state represented by Governor Rockefeller, has been dragging its feet as far as convening the task force. We feel that it is impossible, illogical, backwards, and short-sighted to talk about an affirmative action program when the governing bodies have not yet met to lay down the guidelines and rules for this program. I am reporting to the community at large today that as far as we are concerned, there is no affirmative action program. There never was and there never will be until the task force meets.
Not long after Richard Ford made that press statement, Governor Nelson Rockefeller appointed Robert Douglas as the chairman of the BAAP after a discussion with the program's mediator, Judge Joseph Matina. 1 week later, the task force met.
We authorized or agreed to authorize a new program for B.U.I.L.D to begin to engage the technical manpower to draft proposals to be submitted to the state for state assistance in meeting problems other than that of employment, specifically in the area of recruiting and placement and training, establishing a training program for basic educational skills, housing, daycare, narcotics, and some of the other problems that are of particular concern to the minority community in the Buffalo area.
How can you convince the minority coalition the Buffalo plan will work?
Well, I would be hopeful that through the good offices of Judge Matina and through the hard work that the B.U.I.L.D organization has already put into this plan, that what we've done today and what we plan to do over the next month will be acceptable to the entire community.
We also spoke to the University Construction Fund head, Dr. Anthony Adinolfi. How does the pace of the Buffalo plan relate to the pace of building at the university?
Well, it'll permit us, of course, to move ahead more smoothly. The building of the Amherst campus has significant impact on providing on-the-job training opportunities, as does any increase in the volume of construction in Buffalo and Erie County. So I'm very optimistic.
What funds are available, and when really do you think we'll get started?
Well, we've had great success in getting started at the Amherst campus as of the end of this month. That is the end of January. We'll have either awarded or have on the market for construction contractors to bid some $85 million worth of construction there. And I suspect that many of your listeners have been out around. You can see that we've cut up that property pretty well.
After today's meeting, there's no question but what Albany is going ahead full speed on the Buffalo plan. The question is, will Buffalo follow suit?
Well, the outreach and recruitment program that B.U.I.L.D headed up, the recruiters would go out to pool rooms, bars, street corners, wherever minority men congregated, and recruit the individuals for the various trades. The trades that they recruited for were the operating engineers, the asbestos worker, the sheet metal workers, the plumber, the electrical worker, and the glaziers, and the painters. All you had to do was be mechanically inclined and over the apprenticeable age, which I believe was about 21. I might be mistaken. It might be 19, 20, 21 in that particular age category, and be again mechanically inclined and have a desire to want to participate in that particular craft that you were most suited for. These individuals were recruited, then they were sent on to B.U.I.L.D Assessment Center, where they were assessed, their skills were assessed.
The activities inside this former church here on Northland Avenue are helping a lot of people to learn where it's at for themselves in the ever more competitive job market of today. This is the Skills Assessment Center operated by B.U.I.L.D. of Buffalo and funded by the State Labor Department. The center applies realistic skills assessment procedures to obtain an accurate appraisal of an individual's work skills, worker traits, and training readiness. It is a process using performance tests related to true work situations to analyze and study each person's basic skills and work traits.
What it did is it showed you who you were and what you were and what abilities that you had. And it helped you put a kind of a label on certain things that you didn't know. In other words, you might be interested in a specific field or a specific career area or a specific job. And when you go in for the interview, the best that you can say is, I'm interested and I'm a hard worker. And we hear that a lot today. But what we were trying to do at Skills Assessment Center was saying, this is what I have to offer to an employer. These are the skills that I have. These are the things that he needs in order to operate his business. And that was very important. And Skills Assessment Center would take that kind of a process. It would take your dreams and your aspirations and kind of put them in concrete terms for you to say that this is a career path that you can follow, not just a job. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. They look for just a job instead of a career. And one of the things that we were trying to do is to show you how to market yourself. Instead of us going out, they have an old adage that says, if you give a person a fish, you feed them for one day, you teach them how to fish, you feed them for the rest of their lives. That's what we were trying to do, is show them how to take care of themselves.
Well, everybody has some potential for work. It's a matter of finding out what it is. Many people that we evaluate, if they had gone to a plant, they would never have been given a chance on a job. Well, we have some actual samples of work out of industry right here, and it's all right for them to try out on these. So they keep exploring until they find something that they're very good at. And if they like this, then we make a referral to the industry or to any other employer or a training situation if training is needed.
What has the evaluation program here at the center done for you?
It's done a whole lot for me. It has brought to my attention the things that I'm not too good at, you know, and the things and the places where I'm most strong at, you know. And with working with the different objects and the different tests to find out just where my weakness is, you know, this is what, you know, I've gained from it.
You know, as I run into some of them, even as late as today, they say, John, we thank you guys for the B.U.I.L.D. Skills Assessment Center, because I learned from there that I had the ability to do a number of different things. And as I run into some, as I was saying, some of them today have doctor's degrees, master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, working in all kinds of different types of jobs, where at that time, they did not feel that they had the opportunity to move in that direction. And many of them were high school dropouts. And the Skills Assessment Center, what it did, it encouraged them to go back and get their education. It was a mentoring kind of thing also, because it was a big family affair. People came, they got service, they found out some good things about themselves, and they provided assistance to grow and develop in terms of employment opportunities.
21 members of Buffalo's minority community are supposed to be getting training as plumbers to the Buffalo Affirmative Action Program. But they say that they're not. They say that many of them are not getting any training at all, and now they want something done about it.
Over the past several months, we have experienced frustrating delays in our training cycle, particularly when it comes to OJT, which is on-the-job training. The present program structure does not have a built-in policy for OJT, which means that the union can have 15 to 20 journeymen working on a job site and not have a single trainee. We want some guidelines that will require each contractor to employ a certain number of trainees according to the number of journeymen working on the job in every craft and trade. We are men who have given over 15 months of our lives to this program. We will not quit. As I say again, we will not quit. we will not let the other responsible parties quit. We want an immediate meeting of the task force to rule on our proposal. Until then, we will explore all possible avenues to make the Buffalo Affirmative Action Program work for us, as was the promise in 1971.
I want a meeting immediately with the task force within a week or within 2 weeks. If not, there'll be demonstrations and any kind of thing we can do to get this through for these men to work. They all have families and they have a responsibility to their families. And we didn't go to school for 15 months just to sit down and have 3 guys work. And then when we do go to work, we always wind up doing one specific thing. We're not learning anything on the job.
What do you say to those people who say it doesn't make sense to have trainees working when journeymen are out of work?
When journeymen's out to work, well, you have over 85% of the journeymen's back to work today, as of now, are better, you see.
And it's another thing. Out of 500, I think it's 600 journeymen in the union. And the 85% of them are working. And I think it's quite easy to have 21 trainees on a job.
The trainees say they will do whatever is necessary, including demonstrations, to get what they want. This apartment building for the elderly, now under construction at Humboldt in Maine, is a prominent figure in the argument of the trainees. It's at construction projects like this one and the county's new medical health facility that minority trainees are supposed to be learning how to be plumbers. The union people might argue, what sense does it make to have trainees on the job if those already trained are out of work? The trainees reply, if we don't receive this training, we will always be out of work.
The plan is a blueprint of deception on the black community, with a secret society purporting to represent the black community, when in fact they were appointed by the governor and not by the black community. The plan presently provides lush employment for a few puppets of Governor Rockefeller, some of whom are grossly incompetent. The plan cannot effectively deal with guaranteeing significant employment for blacks in construction.
Now it appears as though the state expects B.U.I.L.D to beg to continue this plan. This B.U.I.L.D will not do. As we stated in 1970, the moment this plan becomes unworkable, B.U.I.L.D would be the first to say, no go. It appears that this is the case at this time.
The BAAP program had been organized under Governor Nelson Rockefeller, and it continued during the tenure of Governor Malcolm Wilson, who served out Rockefeller's term when he would be the became the Vice President of the United States. But when Governor Hugh Carey took over in 1975, and then much changed during that time. And so I think that it had a lot to do with the change in Albany and the prior relationships built with the Republican governor to this whole affirmative action program also was a notion that was fizzling a little bit. It had been a very expensive funded Rockefeller-esque type of program that I think they wanted the B.U.I.L.D organization out of anyways. B.U.I.L.D had had a continuous fight where it had gone into a covenant with the state of New York Department of Labor to provide this assistance, and it had contracts. And so it was a very difficult thing because Bill was accused of mismanaging the money and, I mean, a whole lot of things. So I think those were the initial things, but the geopolitical issue was Rockefeller was out and Hugh Carey was in.
We did not have political connection to Hugh Carey. Arthur Lee was not strongly in support of Bill running the affirmative action program, and he had developed, I think, pretty strong ties to Hugh Carey. And so what happened was there was a commitment made to make the Buffalo Affirmative Action Program broader, to include more protected groups like veterans and women and that sort of thing. And so the program was killed. The program was actually killed. And a new program was promised. And that promise, I don't think, ever really was fulfilled totally.
All the while that the Republicans were in power, the organization had known the BAAP was alive and well. But as soon as Hugh Carey came into power, he gave that program over to R.D. And R.D. quickly formed his own administrative committee, which ran the BAAP, and subsequently the trades walked out because the trades felt that the B.U.I.L.D. organization was the only legitimate organization that represented the minority community, and the only organization that they would sit down with and that they would participate with in a training program. And shortly thereafter, the BAAP folded, the Skills Assessment Center folded, and all of the B.U.I.L.D. staff were out of the job. You have to remember that the BAAP was able to take an individual out of a pool room, off a street corner, out of a bar, or wherever he congregated, train that individual, test that individual, give that individual, make sure that individual has skill, and then give that individual a union card. That individual didn't have to remain here. He could take that union card and take those skills and go any place in the country, if not the world, and earn a living because he had a skill. He was trained by the Buffalo plan. To take that away and give the individual nothing. What's in place now with that same money? The money's still in place in the governor's, in the Department of Labor budget. Through the 78 restoration. The 78 restoration was born in 1978, right after the program folded, with the funds that was earmarked for the BAAP directed over to 78 restoration. So the funds will always be there, but the trades would have nothing of it. It gave them an opportunity to walk away, and that's just what they did, walk away, and they're still away. There will never be another program like this, not in my lifetime, and not in your lifetime, because as you know, and I know, that one of the most racist institutions in this country are those building trades unions.